Story 1. Jennifer Lopez. I believe the negative experiences people have shared about her. She seems to lack friendships with well-known female celebrities, as many of them reportedly cannot tolerate her. I think fame has inflated her ego, which far exceeds her level of talent. Story 2. Ellen DeGeneres is someone I found really funny most of the time, but her show began to decline at some point, leading to awkward moments. I personally preferred Tony as a co-host and DJ more than Twitch, which contributed to some of the awkwardness. Additionally, there were many instances of "this segment went viral, so let's do it again." This made the content feel forced and strange. Story 3. Kevin Spacey is an actor I admired greatly. I was disappointed in both his actions and his handling of the situation after it became public. I feel upset that we are missing out on years of great performances that he would have likely delivered if he had not turned out to be the person he became. Story 4. Joss Whedon is a controversial figure. I won't let him ruin Buffy, Angel, or Firefly, but his underlying influence is still present. He is not the only one, but he was the first person I thought of when this topic came up in my feed. He had everything and could have simply been a normal person at work. Story 5. I hate to say it, but Hulk Hogan. When I was a little kid in the 1980s, I was a Hulkamaniac, and then when I grew up, I realized he was an awful person. Story 6. Dr. Phil. I hate to even admit it. 30-year-old me thought he was full of wisdom. What a disappointment he turned out to be. Additionally, I'd like to mention Oprah Winfrey as someone I no longer view positively. She contributed to both Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz. Story 7. Danny Masterson not only assaulted multiple women, but he is also involved in Scientology. I cried and felt terrible about my feelings for him. Story 8. Marilyn Manson always acted inappropriately, and I played it off as shock rock. However, I am convinced he is quite problematic. Story 9. Grimes. I initially thought she was a young, self-taught talent who created a few fun songs. Now I realize she is a horrible person. Story 10. Dave Ramsey's advice led me to people who made me realize how out of touch he can be. Story 11. I have 8 years of experience working in the Los Angeles entertainment industry, and my list of encounters continues to grow. Vin Diesel, Ellen DeGeneres, Steve Martin, Blake Lively, the list goes on. The one who truly impacted me was Demi Moore. Witnessing how she treated production assistants was shocking. In contrast, Meryl Streep is a remarkable individual who never forgets your name and always greets you with a smile and a hug. Story 12. I was about 10 or 11 when Superbass came out, and I became obsessed with Nicki Minaj. I'm from South America, so nobody really knew who she was, and there wasn't any merchandise I could buy except for a vinyl car sticker I found while shopping with my mom. I begged her to buy me the sticker, which I placed on my laptop, and I had to explain who she was to everyone. I defended her during online fandom wars. I remember when Anaconda came out, and she became really famous everywhere. I was proud to say I had been a fan since the beginning. Then, she defended her brother who had been accused of inappropriate behavior and married another individual with a controversial past. I can't stand her. The way she supports them while making fun of other women is disturbing. She exemplifies delusion, and that rant about substance use ruined her career, in my opinion. Story 13. James Corden. I loved him when he was on Doctor Who and was excited to see him in Into the Woods. Then it all went downhill. Story 14. Jared Leto during the Lord of War and 30 Seconds to Mars' second album era. It is unclear what happened to him afterward. Story 15. Katy Perry. I had her CD in middle school and thought she was so cool. Then she performed on the show MTV tried to replace Total Request Live with the one hosted by Pete Wentz, and she sang poorly. Even young me felt that way. The criticism she receives nowadays is vindicating. I found the clip. It's not as bad as I remember. Story 16. I used to think Bill Maher was funny and sensible. Now that I have started to fact-check and form my own analysis, I find that he is just a self-righteous person who believes he is the perfect liberal. I still listen to his show because I enjoy hearing multiple perspectives from across the political spectrum, but I find that I disagree with him more than I did before. Story 17, Morrissey, once a sensitive and tortured wordsmith, is now a far-right adjacent individual. Story 18, John Lennon. When I was a child, I idolized him. Now I realize he was the type of person I would keep my children away from. Story 19, Neil Gaiman. I am a librarian and have developed many graphic novel collections at various libraries across the country. His works have always been a significant part of that. I have placed his books in the hands of many patrons. I regret how much budget I have spent on his works. Story 20, Katy Perry. What happened to her? Her first album was enjoyable, and I appreciated her pursuit of success, but she seems quite different now. Some people change too much with fame. Story 21. Bill Cosby's comedy specials were enjoyable, and he had a talent for engaging the audience. They were simpler times, I suppose. Story 22. Joss Whedon grew up with Buffy and Angel. He loved Firefly and Dr. Horrible. Cabin in the Woods and the Avengers were amazing. Then he found out how awful of a person he was. Story 23. James Franco was a talented actor, and I had assumed he was a good person. He is one of those cases where it is impossible to separate the art from the artist. Story 24. Jeffree Star, Katy Perry, J.K. Rowling, Ellen DeGeneres, Elon Musk, Gwen Stefani, Datsik, Grimes, Lizzo, Amy Schumer, and Die Antwoord. Story 25. As a Canadian, it hurts to say it, but for me, it's Wayne Gretzky. His true colors are showing. Story 26. Many male celebrities face criticism once it is revealed that they date teenage girls or have acted inappropriately with children. I loved Seinfeld, but I was reminded that in real life, Jerry was in a relationship with a 17-year-old when he was in his 30s. There was an episode in which George and Jerry were both attracted to a teenage girl, and her cleavage was shown while they behaved in a disrespectful manner. It was difficult to watch as an adult. I lost all respect because it is unsettling. There are so many adult women to choose from, yet they opt for a minor instead. It's quite embarrassing. Story 27. Neil Patrick Harris loved his acting in How I Met Your Mother. However, I later learned about his troubling party following Amy Winehouse's death. He served a cake resembling her corpse, which is quite shocking. Although he later apologized, it seemed disingenuous, as if he was unaware of the cake's implications. The image of the cake can be disturbing. Story 28. Big news for me, Joe Gatto from Impractical Jokers. He was by far the funniest of the group, and now we discover what a terrible person he truly is. Story 29. Neil Gaiman created captivating books and shows. However, I have found his actions to be deeply troubling, which has impacted my appreciation for his work. Story 30. The biggest disappointment for me is Elon. Recently, it's Bill Maher. Then there are people I don't necessarily dislike, but I'm just disappointed in them. I genuinely enjoyed their work and wish things had turned out differently. Louis C.K. There were a couple of years when he was one of my favorite comedians, but what he did really undermined his legacy. Chris D'Elia, same story. Dr. Disrespect. I was just a fan of the character and the energy. Cuomo brothers, both had moments when they seemed like steady hands during chaos. And honestly, I just miss Al Franken. He wasn't perfect, but he had integrity, intelligence, and a sense of humor that felt rare in politics. His resignation still feels like a loss. Story 31. Too many. I swear it's a new one every day. It's not that hard to not prey on minors, people. Good God. Story 32. Amy Schumer. I don't hate or dislike her, but I don't find her funny anymore. To be honest, I don't even remember why I did. However, I do remember liking her at one point. Story 33. Adam Levine. I used to love his music in middle school, but when you sit down and listen to his lyrics as an adult, it becomes clear how he portrays women. In every song, it is often the woman's fault for something wrong, and he presents himself as the victim. Women are depicted as running away and deserving punishment. There is often a sexual element involved. Everything feels uncomfortable now. It is even more concerning when you consider his real-life love life. He struggles to maintain relationships. Story 34. Joe Rogan. I used to think he was open-minded and fair, just having a chat and hearing diverse perspectives. It turns out he promotes conspiracy theories and bullies those who disagree with him or challenge the conspiracies of his favorite guests with facts and expertise. Story 35. I enjoyed Joe Rogan when he casually discussed various topics with intriguing guests. Now he appears to be another right-wing commentator. Story 36. I came close to going down the alt-right path in middle school. I was 11 or 12 years old, expressing how much I disliked feminists and how men were unfairly treated by society. I was a fan of Ben Shapiro, thinking he was smart and that his ability to shut down his opponents was impressive. As I began to mature, I realized how much of an inconsiderate person I was being. I started thinking critically about what was being presented to me, leading to significant changes in my personality. I discovered that Ben Shapiro only seemed smart by the standards of a 12-year-old. Ultimately, I fell into that ideology because I was a scared and lonely kid, the perfect audience for the alt-right narrative, which still targets people like me today with alarming success. Check in on your men and boys. It may not be too late for some of them. Don't let them become inconsiderate like I almost did. Story 37. I appreciated Oprah's ability to overcome adversity in her youth and her promotion of literacy through her book club. However, she has also given a platform to controversial figures, and everything I have heard about her off-camera behavior makes me question her character. Story 38. Bill Cosby was one of the greatest stand-up comedians, created 2 amazing sitcoms, and championed education. However, he was also a sexual predator, and I find it difficult to laugh at his jokes about family life knowing his history. Story 39. Lil Dicky. I really enjoyed his work. Then he collaborated with Chris Brown, who has a history of abusive behavior. I don't dislike Lil Dicky now, but I lack respect for him and for anyone who ignores someone else's abusive actions. It wasn't a decision as much as a natural disinterest in him now. Disappointing. Story 40. Melanie Martinez first caught my attention when I was too young to understand how strange and unsettling Crybaby was. Now, with the serious allegations, the non-fungible token controversies, her alleged infidelities, and various other issues that portray her negatively, I feel uneasy whenever I see people idolizing her. Her fan base is quite intense, perhaps because many lonely individuals who relate to her music are also neurodivergent, leading to a special interest in her. They not only harass others but also create wild justifications for her actions. The merchandise collections are, to say the least, troubling. Story 41. Ryan Reynolds and Rick for simply not doing their jobs. Hulk Hogan for being dishonest and racist. Vince McMahon for all the negative actions he has taken. All US politicians. As I've grown older, I've realized they are selfish and only care about enriching themselves. Story 42. Russell Brand. I thought he was charming and intelligent. He warmed my spirit. Turns out he is not what I expected. Story 43. Dave Grohl. Hate is a strong word, but he has recently left a bad taste in my mouth. My mom and I idolized him, not only for being one of the most fantastic performers alive, but also for being a decent person amidst the challenges of show business. Unfortunately, it seems he has fallen victim to those challenges, with his recent cheating scandal and the sudden firing of Josh Freese. I truly hope he finds his way. Story 44. Rob McElhenney. I don't hate Rob and I'm a huge Sonny fan. However, in the Wrexham documentary, he came across as a huge out-of-touch millionaire. Story 45. Bill Maher has always been somewhat cringeworthy, but his views now genuinely make me uncomfortable, especially his stance on transgender issues. Story 46. Leonardo DiCaprio. I was one of the many girls who had a crush on him in the 1990s and early 2000s. Nowadays, he seems quite creepy to me. Story 47. Elon Musk. When he first appeared, he embodied that fun type of millionaire. You know, the guy with too much cash lying around, so he did things everyone would like to do. He built spaceships, created a flamethrower because why not, made a tunnel for no reason whatsoever, smoked a joint during a podcast, and sent his car into space simply because he could. Like a fun uncle, a bit weird but entertaining. And now, does it even need to be said? Story 48. Meat Loaf. I was disappointed to learn that he died of COVID-19 because he was against wearing masks. Come on, the masks were meant to help protect you. It wasn't about control. Story 49. J.K. Rowling created a captivating world that I used to admire, but I now find her views intolerable. I still appreciate the books, movies, fan fiction, and Lego Harry Potter, but I refuse to support her financially. Fortunately, I obtained the Nintendo Switch version of Lego Harry Potter before her views became fully known, but for anything else, I will seek alternative means. Story 50. Kevin James. I thought he was so cute, but after reading stories about him being difficult and unkind to his fans, it was a complete turnoff. Now, I can't even watch him. Story 51. Ryan Reynolds. I loved his comic timing and his acting. However, after everything that has come to light about him, I really dislike him. Story 52. Phil Mickelson. Absolutely disliked Tiger Woods during his prime. I heard many stories from people I know about their interactions with him and his team back in the 2000s. I could go on about his narcissism. Naturally, I pulled for Phil as he was the other superstar of that era. Then I discovered how much of an even bigger narcissist Phil is. His true colors were on display during the initial PGA and LIV spat a few years ago. It was all about him and only him. Story 53. I started reading Mists of Avalon and was enjoying it until I decided to look up the author, Marion Zimmer Bradley. Despicable is an understatement. Story 54. Patrick Rothfuss is a fantasy writer who started a trilogy that remains unfinished. He is reminiscent of George R.R. Martin, though with a more questionable reputation. Rothfuss has been criticized for running a dubious charity and relying on fan goodwill by occasionally releasing subpar novellas set in his fictional universe. He has also made and broken numerous promises, including a Kickstarter goal that was intended to unveil the first chapter of his third book. Many fans hope that the series will eventually be handed over to Brandon Sanderson. Story 55. Mr. Beast used to be a cool guy. However, he has kind of become a supervillain. I give it 2 years until he does a challenge that causes someone to die. Story 56. Elon Musk. 10 years ago, I only knew him for electric cars. What little I knew made me think he was trying to help the environment. How far I have come to dislike him. Story 57. Chris Brown has created many of my favorite songs, but I was shocked to learn about his actions toward Rihanna and other women. Story 58. I used to think Elon Musk was just an eccentric, wealthy individual who created innovative cars, played with flamethrowers, and wanted to colonize Mars. Now I have a different opinion of him. Story 59. I have personally canceled very few celebrities, but I used to be a fan of Mel Gibson and I liked Harvey Weinstein. I am no longer a fan of either of them. Story 60. Dave Grohl was one of my musical idols in my younger years. In recent times, he has faced challenges in his personal life, including the end of his marriage. Recently, he parted ways with the drummer Josh Freese without any clear reason. The band seems directionless since the passing of Taylor Hawkins, which is disappointing to witness. Story 61. Bill Cosby, Neil Gaiman, J.K. Rowling, Snoop Dogg, John Hamm. The first 4 have been discussed, but here's why I don't like Hamm. He refuses to talk about the first incident, and he embodies the archetype of a revolting day-trapey fraternity guy in the second. Story 62. Beyoncé, with all the Jay-Z drama, running this large music empire with Diddy, really messed it all up for me. Story 63. I used to love Helena Bonham Carter, but then she made a statement saying J.K. Rowling doesn't deserve all the hate. Story 64. This might get me some criticism, but Jack Black's actions in throwing Kyle under the bus immediately left a sour taste in my mouth. In that moment, I thought he was a sellout. Story 65. I liked Jordan Peterson when he first introduced his rules for life, but watching him become highly political and heavily involved in modern sex-centered social debates was a significant letdown. I understand that he likely had these thoughts and feelings before his rise to fame, but they did not seem to emerge initially. What I witnessed was his transformation from a contemporary inspirational speaker to a political commentator, which was disappointing. We have too many of those currently, and I find it difficult to listen to him now. Story 66. Conor McGregor. The rise was just as dramatic as the fall. However, peak Conor McGregor was an incredible time. Now he's just an older man struggling with addiction. It's unfortunate. The money will eventually run out. Story 67. I started listening to Joe Rogan in 2016, as he had the only podcast I followed, and I thought it was good. In 2020, I began exploring more podcasts and quickly realized I enjoyed them much more. By the end of summer 2020, I was so frustrated that I could no longer listen. I have tried giving him another chance a few times since and started episodes featuring guests I liked, but I can't get through 30 minutes without hearing him express ignorance. The pandemic changed him. Story 68. Tom Cruise had a huge crush on him in the 1980s and 1990s, but when I found out about his involvement in Scientology, he no longer appealed to me. Story 69. Bill Cosby was a significant part of my childhood, and as an adult, I was in the midst of watching The Cosby Show and writing a blog about it. I discontinued the blog when it started receiving attention for reasons I disagreed with. Initially, it was difficult to believe the accusations and to come to terms with what was happening. However, I closely followed the developments and felt quite horrified. He is a monster. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.